Welcome back to another episode of the Rise Over Run podcast. This is going to be a very different episode than we have done in the past because the only audience for this episode of the podcast are Remi employees. That's new.
Yeah.
Look, when it comes to company building and communications, some of the hardest things is I feel like personally I'm repeating myself over and over and over again.
Every day.
Every day. But the problem is, it's probably real that many people in our organization are hearing something for the very first time. And so this is another attempt for us to try to repeat ourselves, what I feel like repeating ourselves again, but maybe just through another medium, giving people the opportunity to hear from us directly on the things that we're thinking about. Specifically today, we're going to talk about Clean Desk, the focus of the company, or as we talk about it on my team, what we call the one thing that we're really focused on. To try to give you guys some perspective about how you should think about this conversation. What we're going to try to do is let you see what it's like when Reno and Brant and I get in a room as founders and talk about the company. You're going to, I kind of want to peel that away and let you just see what it's like to hear us talk about the things that are on our mind and like what we're talking about. Brant was saying this anecdote the other day where, well, why don't you go and you start talking about the business and then some things start to happen.
Yeah, like it kind of occurred to me the other day, I go wander over and talk to Sam or some engineer and we start, talking about the business and people kind of gradually gravitate over and start to listen or ask questions. And especially with some of the newer people, it's like, oh, you've been here 3 months or 6 months or whatever. You probably don't know a lot of these things that I just inherently think everyone knows.
Yep. So the first thing on my mind as it relates to Clean Desk, we started working toward the end of July on, we were coming out of Remi licensed labor, which was like the core focus of the company in our May executive offsite. And I'm going to reiterate again because we have a lot of new people, but we do board meetings the first Tuesday of the month following a quarter end. So we do board meetings the first week of February, May, August, and November. And then the week following the board meeting, I take my team off site to do planning for the next quarter. And as leading up to the May board meeting, I watched a clip by Frank Slootman. We should probably even share the clip again. Frank Slootman was a CEO. He's retired now, but he was the CEO of ServiceNow. He was the CEO of Snowflake, very, very large, perhaps 2 of the 5 most successful SaaS businesses of all time. Very, very good CEO. And he talks about sitting in board meetings and he would look at executives and they would have this list of priorities. And there's like 5 or 8 things on this list. And he's like, I look at it and I instantly want to die. I was like, I'm falling asleep because when you have this many priorities, you don't have any. He's like, what I want to know is just that one thing. What is the one thing that you guys have got to go work on? And once you get that solved, what is the next one thing?
Found out early on that if you can whittle things down to just one thing, you become unstoppable. Unfortunately, people resist whittling things down to one thing because it's really hard to decide what that one thing is. People have a very easy time telling you what their top 3 or their top 5 things are because hopefully the right ones are in there, somewhere. But sort of painting the waterfront, I can't tell you how many board meetings I've been in where a CEO would put, PowerPoint slide up. And it's like one bullet after another. These are all the things that are our priorities. And you just know that, you're going to be a mile wide and an inch deep. You're going to be swimming in glue, moving like molasses. I mean, the energy is leaving my body already just watching, a long list of priorities. I'd rather have that conversation, if I could only do one thing. Because now we're getting to the point of what really matters here. What is really, really important and what is just lesser important and what is not important at all. And, you go to MBA school, they're really, really good at, describing the entire waterfront, but I just want to know that one thing. And it's such a hard conversation and it's a high risk conversation because you could be wrong. Well, that's exactly the point, that you could be wrong. And by the way, if you have 10, you're already wrong now because you have 10 instead of 1, So In other words, you have already basically devalued, what you should be doing because you're time sharing now with all these other things, right? So I like to do things in sequence. In other words, prioritize, even if you're not sure, do it anyways, okay? Because in the process of doing, you're going to find out whether you're right or wrong or somewhere in between, and then you can adjust, right? But just pull it apart, sequence yourself, then start. By the way, things are going to go much quicker because you have a much narrower plane of attack. So it's energizing, the pace picks up, all these kinds of things, and you will figure out whether you were right or wrong, because as you're progressing, you're going to find out whether this was a good call or a bad call.
As we were thinking about the one thing, well, there's 100 one things to think about. And the work, and I actually, this is part of our executive meetings, is you ask somebody, I'll ask Reno, Reno, what do you think we're gonna do in revenue, or when do you think this thing is gonna come up? And he's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, you gotta have an opinion. You have to place a bet on something happening, and you're not gonna get 100% right. So how would you frame up this thing where it's we have somebody come to us and they're like, well, this thing is a huge problem. We've got to do something about it. Do the executives not know or care that this is happening? How would you frame that up for someone?
Sometimes we don't, but I think it's very rare that that's the case. And if I try and extrapolate out a longer term strategy, it might be something like, we're trying to be like Amazon. And if we sit down, one-on-one, write down the list of things that we need to do to be like Amazon, anyone in the company could probably write out 20 things. Now what? Which ones do we do first?
Yeah.
So that's the whole game. And just because someone thinks of a problem, doesn't really get us anywhere.
It is helpful. Problem identification is good.
Yeah.
It's important. But then it's okay, the next step is how do you solve the problem? And the next step after that is in what order? And that is the hard part. We can usually get to solutions on problems fairly quickly about how we're thinking about it, but then it's well, where does it go in the list? That is the magic and the challenge. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'm dealing with this problem nonstop, it's probably a problem that we are aware of, that we know about, not always, so you should definitely make sure that everyone is aware. We've chosen on purpose to sequence it behind something else that we believe is a higher order problem. And all of that thinking is what actually goes into the discussions around what is the next one thing, solve that problem, and we're into the next sequencing of what's the next one thing that we're gonna go work on. And so for the first time in May, we tried to make a decision of what was the one thing? And primarily that one thing was Remi licensed labor. And really what it was get the cost of labor down. That was the one thing, but Remi licensed labor was the vehicle to do that. And into late July, we were coming into a very successful execution of that plan. We had never done a Remi licensed labor job at the May board meeting. And by the end of July, 40% of our roofs in July were done through Remi licensed labor. It was this very, very quick ramp. And we were feeling like we were getting our arms wrapped around it. And so we started talking about what's the next thing that we should really go focus on? And how many hours of meetings did we have as a team leading up before the board meeting?
Oh,
it was a lot.
All combined, probably hundreds. Yeah.
But as a full team, probably maybe 10 hours.
Yeah. As the exec
as a
team.
full team.
Yeah.
And it was the water was fairly muddy. We didn't really know what we wanted to go do. And then we realized a lot of stuff was breaking, and that we needed to go kind of strengthen the foundation, because we felt like we were going to come into 2026 with a lot of growth. And in order to do that, we needed to kind of strengthen the foundation. And that's what we went into the offsite mid-August with the focus of like, let's go strengthen the foundation. It was like, I think the offsite was about the 18th of August, in that range.
Yeah.
And then it became pretty clear through dozens of hours of meetings at the offsite that we could clarify it even one step further, that we just needed all of the departments at Remi to get to clean desk. And then we kind of had to define that. So what does that even mean?
I think as we talked, there were enough anecdotes and data that came out that kind of, at least for me, gave me the visual of like a very dirty restaurant kitchen. It's like we were pumping out the food, we were largely delivering it on time, but in the cases in which we weren't, it was related to like these kind of piles of plates and
Dirty pans
and other stuff that we'd kind of just like let grow over time because we were just trying to like get the food out. And so, yeah, I think basically it was a gut feeling combined with some data that we need to just like take a step back and figure out how to clean up our mess department by department, and that kind of took a different shape for everyone.
And the foundational product associated with Clean Desk is our ticketing system, which we had started working on in April, May timeframe, and had made some really good progress. And we were starting to layer kind of an AI layer on top of the tickets to like surface what I would call the biggest, hairiest, nastiest problems. And you know, I don't think even many people think about it this way, but at any given time now, we have like 3,500 active projects. That's a lot. So how is somebody in CS or contractor operations or sales supposed to know on this single project, what should I do? And is this the single most important project I should be working on today? And there were things that we felt like needed to happen to get these AI tickets to produce outcomes that we wanted. Like, how have we done so far on that?
I think if you compare against the way that these projects have gone at most other companies, I don't know what the real stat is, but I've heard up to 95% of all AI projects at, Fortune 500 companies fail. Like they just full on shut it down.
Shut them down.
So, I mean, by the mere fact that we're actually using it, I think is a sign of success. But I believe beyond that, we've done pretty good at surfacing what you're calling like the highest yield items to go work on, and are doing that basically every time anything changes on a project. So it's real time, actionable stuff that we're putting on people's plate team by team.
The tickets are starting to work, and we have reporting that says what % of the tickets that are open and active today are getting to 0 every day. And we are basically, and if we're at 0 actionable tickets on a given day, there's nothing that can possibly be done to close these tickets out. That would be defined as clean desk. And many of our teams, this is relevant for. It's relevant for the CS team, the resolutions team, the sales teams, both post-PTO and direct to consumer. It's true for contractor operations. It's true for finance and accounting. It's not true for the R&D teams, generally speaking. I think we are very close to getting those tickets to clean desk every day across all of those departments in it's been about 60 days. That's very good. It's very, very strong. Now, there are 2 ways to get a ticket to clean. It's like resolve the problem or snooze it until later because you can't actually action it. And we also have reporting on like the % of tickets that are getting snoozed versus getting resolved and like improving that ratio over time. But I think we've made very good progress against this. But still, if you go into our notifications channel in Slack about homeowner feedback, and you're like, oh man, we're still getting 1s on customer effort or customer reviews. Our business is like a cruise ship. It's really, really, really difficult to get it turned around. It takes a long time. So like one of the ways is like, well, what percentage of our total funnel of projects was quoted after August 1st? And this was probably 4 weeks ago that I said this, but it was only 55%. That had been 60 days already. I think a lot of the efforts that we've been making over this 60-day period aren't really going to show up fully until like the new year. But where would you grade us on kind of the speed at which we've been able to attack Clean Desk and how we're performing against Clean Desk today?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I comp this against other types of businesses that I've been a part of that are similar to the service space, I haven't seen anyone do what we're doing. I think it's probably somewhere between B+ and A-. There's a lot of areas in particular that I'm really proud of. And I think, I don't know, I toss, we're building out like a homeowner experience score so we can measure this a little bit more rigorously and know exactly where we're at with the customer experience. But I pinged a number of people around the company and just like asked them what their feeling is. And I've gotten answers anywhere from, 85 to 90%. They feel like of our customers would recommend the experience to someone else, which is way higher than I was expecting to hear, to be honest. These are the people that are in CS and deal with all the problems.
So as I think about customer feedback loops and how these things, if you go look at our Google reviews, which I think our marketing team has spent a lot of time really driving to go drive volume to get Google reviews. We have almost 200 of them now, which is a far fewer number than the feedback that we get through the Slack channel, which is just our type form that goes out to all customers. And most of, I think the bulk of them that are negative that come through the type form, when we get one, we are attacking that problem head on. We're not trying to hide from it. We're not just trying to see that what people said. We're literally instantly reaching out on both the customer side and the contractor side of when things went wrong. I think one of the things that I want to make sure is clear to our team, when was the last time when you gave negative feedback to another company and they called you within 30 minutes of delivering that feedback? Never?
Yeah.
For me, it's never.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is important that I want to make sure is very clear to our team, I do not believe it is possible at the scale already that we are at today for us to flawlessly execute every time. It's what I want. I want us to build processes and relationships and partnerships across all of our contractors and our teams to be able to do that. That is the goal. But I don't think it's realistic to assume that that's going to happen every time. And sometimes you get really, really unreasonable customers. That happens as well. But I do believe the best customer service companies on planet Earth, so you think about who these are: Costco, Nordstrom, Amazon, Chick-fil-A, Zappos, that when something goes wrong, they address it and fix it. And I think the stage that we're at right now is we're doing a very good job of addressing it quickly.
Yep.
Where we need more work is fixing it quickly. Sometimes, I go in and we have some reporting that we look at as an executive team in the weekly business review, where we see that on the resolutions tickets, so Chaz's team that deals with the biggest, hairiest, nastiest problems, we de-escalate them very quickly. And they're really happy with how we're de-escalating and taking care of them. But it's still taking us sometimes weeks to resolve the problem. Some of those things are out of our control, like we have to coordinate with Sunrun, or we don't have the correct materials, or there's real reasons as to why. But I think we've got to work really hard to resolve them faster. And I think that's the first. I think I would be remiss if I didn't say, I'm really, really proud of where we have gotten. I think from where we were in the spring, it's like night and day difference.
Yeah, like if I'm thinking about the moment that I was sitting up at night, 6 to 9 months ago, going through our customer service chats and unearthing the pile of shit that I found in ways that we weren't responding to customers ever, and missing 50% of the calls and all the other things that we found, it's night and day different.
Yep.
I think also the Amazon thing is interesting. It's a framing that I've been thinking a lot about recently, because I think your point is like, sometimes with customer service, it kind of feels like, oh, you see a bad review and everyone wants to go like, I don't know, lay down and be mopey about it. It's like, oh, we like let someone down. But in the grand scheme of the number of jobs that are active, if there's 3,200 or whatever, for us to get like one bad review a day is doing quite good.
Yep.
And I think Amazon's interesting because their customer experience is not flashy. It's not maybe what you'd call like premium, but largely they do what they say they're going to do, and then when they don't, they fix it quickly. And I think that's, especially at scale, like something we'll have to pursue at greater and greater lengths. Like if you go look at Amazon's business over the course of 20 years, the way that they attack this in year 3 versus 20 is the difference between them basically replacing UPS with their own vans and stuff like that. Like they've gone to very extreme lengths over time, but I think as like a 20-year customer of theirs, I don't know, I can't really think of any significantly bad experience I've ever had.
Yeah, another like framework here is like with Costco. If you walk into Costco and you're returning something, they just take it.
Yeah.
Except for TVs, they don't do that. But they're pretty clear up front, like we're not taking your TV back. Who takes the pain of the return? The supplier. But the supplier knows this up front. They know that this is the expectation, and they're still okay with it. Why? Because there's enough value that Costco is delivering to that supplier. People kill to get into Costco.
Yeah.
That is what it needs to feel like for our contractors. They know that we are going to go back to them and we're going to say, fix the problem. I know it's complex. I know there's challenge. I know. Fix it. But on the other side, there needs to be enough value. And like I've been thinking about this a lot of like, how do we really drive value? And guys, there is so much good stuff happening for our contractors. But more than anything else, there's this long tail of things that contractors probably complain about or care about or whatever. I really think it's 3 things that they really care about. 1, do we give them work, real work, consistently? If that's true, they definitely do not want to lose us as a sales channel. That's number 1. Number 2, do we pay them on time? Yes, we're very, very good. And speaking as someone who has to collect money from others, that is not just a given. So we collect money on time, or we pay on time. And then number 3, it's like, can we save them money in other areas? And a lot of this is happening on the supply side of the business, and Travis is making huge inroads here. And because of those 3 things, if those 3 things are true for our contractors, they will listen on SLA and timelines. They will fix problems when they arise, and they'll be very responsive. And we can deliver not a perfect experience. And the thing that I want to tell everyone before we get to the engineering side and like the product and R&D stuff, which I want to talk through, we are not going to be perfect. But when we are not perfect, we've got to fix it. And then we got to fix it fast. And we're not fixing it fast yet. As fast as I think we can. And these transactional, the Amazons, the Costcos, it's a little different. We're like repairing roofs.
Yeah.
It's never going to be like instantaneous. But I think we need to shorten the time to resolution more and more and more and more. And that's something that was going to take us probably years to really get to a place where we're like world class. But we can communicate, resolve, and commit to resolving quickly. And I think we've gotten from what I would rate us as poor at the beginning of the year to, I think, pretty darn close to world class right now. When I tell other business owners or senior executives at other places that we are getting to clean desk every day, they like lean in and ask me like dozens of questions. So I want you guys to feel proud about where we are. I think that's a really important thing. And I also want you to realize we basically put everything else on hold over the last 90 days to go address this thing.
You work with a lot of talented people, and especially in this type of industry, and I'm this way too. It's like, I just want to go fix problems. I don't even care to hear about anything else, to be honest, in most cases. But you spend too long there and you do kind of lose perspective. Like if you even go look at, Airbnb or some of the other companies that we do admire, if you go look at like their reviews pages, it's
a war zone.
You get kind of an insight into like what this looks like at scale. And there's a lot of bad stuff that happens just because of the volume of things that happen. So that is kind of the, sometimes the downside of having like these public review channels is because it's mostly the negative stuff. The way that I try to like frame it for my team is like, I want to pay attention to that and I want us to keep getting better every day with like the right expectations and not sink into these weird states of mind where we become comfortable with like bad things happening, but also just like know that this is going to be small iterations over the course of the next 15 years that we'll be proud of.
Okay, let's talk about R&D. How should we think about Clean Desk for the R&D team?
I think primarily there's a whole bunch of stuff, but I think the most important piece is when you're building software, it represents business context with kind of like a way to talk to a computer, and you bring those things together and it produces, the software that we all use. And what tends to happen over time is we make mistakes in how we interpret the business context, or oftentimes as the business grows, because at this point we have probably like 1 million lines of code. You don't understand all of the ways in which the business has changed, and thus we need to go update the code because there's 1 million lines to look at. And so as we grow fast, you end up with these areas of the code base that just need help, they need work, they need updating. And what we found is a couple things. I started going over to members of my team and asking, how many urgent problems do we have to fix right now? Like how many severe bugs exist? And we didn't have an answer. And so you can kind of extrapolate downstream of that. Basically, that means that the rest of the company finds them before we do, which is bad because someone's trying to do their work, they're in the middle of something, and then it doesn't work. So we kind of broke this down into a few different milestones to go against. And the first one was just go put the instrumentation in place such that we know how many severe problems we have at any given time. There's like a very clear list, they're labeled well, and we know when we see them what it means. Like it's not computer gibberish, which is how most errors show up by default. So we've gotten to that place. We got to that place probably 3 weeks ago. And when we got to that place, it's kind of this like mountain of things to go fix that you're all of a sudden aware of. And
probably fairly intimidating.
Yeah, yes. Because like, I don't know, 2/3 of it is kind of noise. Like they're not things that are gonna urgently disrupt anyone's workflow, but if you get enough of them combined together, they could. So you want to take care of everything at some point. But there was about a couple thousand unique issues to go solve that were like stacked up there waiting to burn down. We've worked over the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks on that. That's the odd job team. We've burned it down to where we're now only seeing 25 of those unique issues show up a day. So our chart is like this like steady trend downward to getting close to the 0 a day that we're after. And where we're at with that is we're getting down to the 0 a day on what we call like severity 1 bugs. So this type of work is like hard to, I don't know, show everyone a lot of times because it is a little bit more technical, but I do think it's starting to show up where, you know, these like issues that everyone bumps into that interrupts their work are starting to dwindle. And like as this plays out over the next probably month or two, I expect that people's work will be interrupted more of an exception than it has been.
Well, through a very similar lens, it's like, well, you know what would be way easier? Just don't write code with bugs.
Yeah.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's not realistic. But in a very similar way, it's the same thing. We need reporting that tells us when an actual bug is present. And then we need to attack it, address it, and then once again, it's like how fast can we actually address these things? And speeding up that feedback loop is really the secret here. It's actually very similar to the operations side of the business. It's just a different thing. So how far away are we to getting to the point where we're identifying and resolving very quickly?
We are resolving quickly now. I think that happens. The triage time on the high severity bugs is on average 30 minutes. So it's like gets reported, we take it, we do something with it. Getting resolved is probably more on the order of a couple hours.
And what about as we move down from tier 1 to kind of the lower grade bugs that we want to definitely get rid of? And
yeah, those are, some of those have been sitting for weeks.
How do you want the company to be thinking about those types of bugs as it relates to Clean Desk?
I should probably clarify what they are. Like a severity 1 bug is basically, I cannot do my work unless this is
resolved.
Like it's completely blocking. Severity 2.
The Remi app is down.
Yeah, or like I click a button and it doesn't submit or like whatever. There's a severity 2 that's like, this is really inconvenient and it wastes my time, but there is a workaround. So maybe it's like a notification shows up in someone's app but not in their email or something. Like it's still very problematic, and then there's like the last level of severity things that where we have most of the things that sit for a long time that are more along the side of minor annoyances, like maybe a page loads in 4 seconds when we could make it load in 1 second, like things like that. So in the aggregate, it can definitely add to an app feeling bad. So you don't want too many of them there, but any one of them on their own, it probably isn't gonna be like that big of a deal. So we're like, I want the first 2 categories to be the things that people largely don't feel anymore by the end of the year. And I think we're trending pretty well towards that. Most of the work I would say we're working on right now is actually, now that we see very clearly the things that happen and like how we get to those places, the bad places where the errors can happen, we're actually just putting in way more preventative measures so they like never even show up in the first place. So an example of this would be, right now, if you try and take 2 bids and merge them together, we don't really take a step back in the code and ask, should we do this? Like, based on the state that this bids in and the state that this bids in, like, will this cause any problems if we do this? We just let them do it. Yep. And downstream, it could be like a week later, it's like, oh, well, the data, because we did this, doesn't really make sense anymore because we like skipped over 3 steps. And we didn't fire off all the things in the system that needed to happen for us to have a good outcome a week later. So, to fix that, the work we're doing now, we write code that when we merge a bid together, in this example, we're gonna like pop a thing up and ask a few questions. It's like, what do you expect to happen when we merge these together? Like, what data do you actually want to come from this one and this one? And like, are you okay with auto completing these 3 tasks in between because we're gonna merge these bids together? So there's like, sometimes just code to write, sometimes there's actual like interfaces to build. And this type of work that I'm talking about, that's the preventative measures, will be, I think, kind of like a level up to how we build software in perpetuity, more than what we've done in the past. So yeah, I don't know, that's kind of how I think about.
Okay, so I think the last thing that I want to set the stage on is, you touched on it a little bit, but year 3 of a company looks very different than year 15 of the company. And there are a lot of companies that we admire today that are in year 15 or year 20 or year 30 of their company. And so when you think, if you take Amazon, because everybody knows Amazon, if you think about Amazon Prime, if you think about same-day shipping, if you think about AWS, and if you think about the speed of their website, if you think about the size of their supply network that exists, and the number of products that are there, and the pricing that they're able to get, all those things, they're kind of like bowling pins. Like, you look at it and you're like, oh, they're all knocked down. But they have to be knocked down one at a time. And we are early in this process. And so what you're gonna feel a little bit is, when you're into the weeds, you're gonna feel like sometimes the world is burning. But it's not. A single project could be burning, and like, let's go address it with fervor and speed and intensity and take care of the customer. But generally speaking, over time, you're gonna feel on the engineering side, you're gonna see less bugs. The uptime of the product will just go up. The things that you expect the software to do will just go up. The interfaces will be smoother, and they'll start working on mobile. And there's and over time, the problems that we are dealing with today, or that we were dealing with 6 months ago, lessen and lessen and lessen, and we're gonna go swallow new things. So the guy who runs Sequoia Capital, which is, arguably the best venture capital firm in the world, his name is Roelof Botha. I was listening to him talk the other day, and he was talking about empires. And he said, empires have flexible borders and endless ambition. So what's going to happen as we move forward is the borders of our country, what we're working on today, probably will get relatively solved, those problems. But we're gonna go expand our borders. And they're gonna introduce new problems, things that we're trying to deal with. And so as you're working, it's gonna feel sometimes like we are never out of the mud. That's true. But the number of customers we're helping, the scope of the work that we're doing, the complexity of the types of projects that we take on, the enterprise partners that we're able to win, all of this stuff is going to grow because our ambition is very, very high. But I want you to hear it from us directly. We are committed to doing what we did at this period of time, which is address the problems, burn them down, and get to Clean Desk. Clean Desk is like a foundational principle of the company. Would you add or say anything different to that?
Yeah, I think 2 things. One, if you're young in your career, it's like hard to kind of see the perspective. Like some of the problems that people are going to encounter whether that's like a bad customer experience or whatever, it's going to be like the first time you deal with that. And I think the first time you deal with a problem, it tends to feel existential, whether that's like for your career or the company or whatever. And I think the longer you do this, you realize that very, very few things are actually that. And, you know, I think we could both rattle off stories of really bad things that have happened that we came back from and actually things were fine. And I think as far as like, I don't know, maybe a shift I'm trying to make is like, I think we probably need to spend more time reinforcing the things that we want to see more of. Like, because I do think, you know, as I've started to dig into this, where are we at with the customers again? It's once again just kind of like surprising how well I think we've actually done. And it's, you know, it's probably more of us needing to share like positive customer experiences and going out and finding more of that stuff than just like all the bad stuff. Because I do think just seeing that kind of gives everyone energy. And anyways, yeah, I feel like, you know, I'm proud of what we've done, and I feel like it's something that not a lot of companies would or have invested in the way that we have. So I think like our proof's been in the pudding, and it's something that, you know, I expect we'll keep doing as we grow.
And if you look at our public-facing reviews, there's like this divergence from the Typeform reviews. And I've asked myself, like, why is that the case? Well, I think the case is we're letting people vent, complain when they've had a bad experience, and addressing it. People feel the need to go public with those concerns when they don't get addressed. And so I think the public-facing reviews of Remi are actually quite accurate about how we think about things and the level of commitment we have to resolving concerns. And the same as you, I'm actually really proud of the work that we're doing here. We're not perfect. And I want to say thank you to everybody, because I think this is a massive collective effort and a lot of care going into making sure we're taking care of customers. And I think the teams are doing an excellent job of representing the ethos of who we want to be. And it's going to take us some time, but we're going to continue to burn this stuff down, and it's going to feel sometimes like the world is burning, and it's not. And just as a reminder, we are completing about between 400 and 500 projects every single week now, and we're getting nowhere near that number of complaints. It's like a very, very small fraction of those are things that we've got to address at a real level. So hopefully this was interesting and also helpful contextually, and we're going to test this kind of method of communication out and see if it works. But we appreciate you guys spending a few minutes with us. Thanks.